Is the recent proposal to allow sex offenders the right to remove their name from the sex offenders register yet another example of Parliament losing its powers over Europe?
This is the decision which the Prime Minister himself said was appalling for him, made by the Supreme Court, allowing sex offenders the right to apply to have their name removed from the register after a number of years. Nigel Farage.
The answer to that is yes, of course. But we mustn't just think that when we talk about votes for prisoners, when we talk about the sex offenders list, we must not think that we're just talking about the European Court of Human Rights. I know that Parliament wants you to believe it, and much of the media wants you to believe it. That has become one and the same as our membership of the European Union. Indeed, the Lisbon Treaty, the treaty that all three of these parties here promised us referendums on and then denied us, actually within it, Article 6 of it, is that the ECHR will be incorporated into the body of law of the European Union. So we're in a situation here where what Parliament did last week by saying no to votes for prisoners was in fact to demonstrate its own impotence. What has happened over the course of several decades now is that our political classes have literally given away our ability to govern our own country. They've given away our democracy. Michael Heseltine has been doing it for decades. The others here joined in rather later. And we now have a situation where foreign judges of dubious provenance can decide how we operate and how we live in this country. Now, I have a view on this. I think we shouldn't be part of this political union. I think we should trade with Europe, cooperate with Europe, and be good next-door neighbours. But frankly, it shouldn't matter what I think or what you think. What should happen here is these people should keep their promise, and let's give the British people a free and a fair referendum so that they can decide. Do we govern our own country through the ballot box, or do we allow foreign judges to run Britain? That's what it's about.
Michael Heseltine.
Well, we were asked a specific question, and Nigel perhaps understandably avoided the question in order to give us a rant of his views.
I think I answered the question, actually, very quickly in the first couple of words, didn't I?
No, you really didn't.
Well, I said yes.
And of course,
I mean, how's yes for an answer?
Well, yes is a way of avoiding answering the question.
Oh, really? Well, let's see what you do, shall we?
Yes, well, let us... There are two specific issues here. One, whether the decision about prisoners or paedophiles is the right one, and secondly, whether we should be part of what was set up in 1948, the European Court of Human Rights, in order to say to the suppressed people of Eastern Europe that there is a hope and an opportunity and a beacon of justice and freedom in the West. And we will be here as long as it takes to change your regime. And I think that was rather a fine thing to do. Now, it's perfectly true, as time has gone on, the breadth of the European Court of Human Rights has extended in a way that I think there's a case for reform. But I'm not sure that we want the Foreign Secretary of this country to go across the world preaching decency, freedom, the right of people to behave as they like, to be told, but you are the only Western country to have torn up the one treaty that enshrines those rights in law. I don't think I want my Foreign Secretary put in that position.
Do you think it's a good idea to have a British Bill of Rights, then, to take the place of the other, which is what David Cameron says he wants?
Well, they've set up a commission to look at that.
Do you want it?
But my own guess is it won't. It will still leave us with a substantive issue. Should we have international agreement on certain rights? Now, I would be the first to say that on the two particular issues of the prisoners and on the paedophiles...
Prisoners' votes.
The prisoners' votes and the paedophiles, it's about as difficult as it gets to try and defend and explain it away. But just on the paedophiles, and I'm the first to recognise that there'll be probably not a single person in this audience and very few in the wider audience who will listen to the precision of the issue. The issue is if your name has been put on the register at maybe quite a young age, do you have the right to appeal to see whether it should come off? It doesn't give you any right to take it off. It merely gives you the right to appeal. The appeal will be determined by a senior policeman. Now, should you have the right? I think, I must confess, I've wrestled with this all day. I find it very difficult to say that something that might have been a mistake 15 years ago should never, never be open to question.
But, Lord Heseltine, the question, and you accuse me of not answering the question. The question the gentleman asked was, is Parliament losing its power? Would you answer that, please?
Yes, of course. Parliament has taken the biggest possible decisions to enhance its sovereignty by sharing sovereignty with other like-minded...
Surrendering sovereignty?
No, enhancing it.
All right, all right.
I think the question is that even if, jobs were to be created in industry, I think a case of affluenza seems to have swept across the younger generation, and even though they've gone to university, they want the highest paid jobs. And I don't think that jobs in industry are actually going to pay that, and I just don't think that, jobs in industry will enable people will want to go into those jobs.
Nigel Farage?
Well, the questioner is absolutely right. But I think IDS is a very good man and one of the best parts of this government. He really is. He's a cabinet minister who has actually studied his brief and cares about it passionately. But you're right. None of it will work unless there are jobs to go to. So how do we create jobs? That's really the question. And nobody tonight so far has talked about small businesses. Because we can talk about big manufacturing companies, sir, and all the rest of it, but actually, 3/4 of people who work in the private sector in Britain work for firms with 10 or less employees. They are the people, more than anybody, that have suffered massively, not just under Labour, but under the Tories before, under this welter of regulations, especially employment regulations, whereby, if you're a small employer, you're terrified of taking anybody on because you can finish up very quickly with a costly industrial tribunal. It is very scary running a small business. I know. I did it for 9 years when I had a real job before politics. So we need to reduce the regulatory burden on small businesses to make it easier for them to hire and fire, especially young people. And to do that, we need to tell the EU where to go because most of the regs come from there. Secondly, what we need to do is control the amount of foreign, unskilled labour coming into Britain. We've had an open door since 2004 to the whole of Poland and Eastern Europe. Amazing, since 2004, there have been 1.3 million new jobs created for foreign-born people, and yet the number of UK-born people working has gone down by 1/3 of a million. And the last thing I would say...
Foreign, therefore, meaning anybody outside Britain.
Meaning anybody outside Britain, of course. I mean, whether you come from Poland or Pakistan, it seems to me this is overseas, and that's how we should view it. And lastly, can I say one thing, and in fact I do agree with Vince's party on much of this, what we need to do is to incentivise people to get off benefit and get back to work. This terrible marginal tax trap, nobody earning minimum wage should pay tax. That would get people wanting to get off benefit and get back to work.
Nigel Farage.
I think that in a world where we're used to professional career politicians, we're not used to anybody resigning over anything. We're not used to anybody apologising over anything. I mean, Gordon Brown, our Chancellor for all those years, the man that sold off 400 metric tonnes of gold at less than $300 an ounce, that signed us up to PFI deals, which will leave us in ruin for years. I mean, all the awful things that Brown did, and never at any point did he hold his hands up and say, we got this wrong? And we've seen this from government, so I think that, and I do agree with Michael, that forests don't necessarily need to be managed by the state, but I think this was mishandled so badly that everybody thought the forests were going to be sold off to private companies, fences would be put round them, public access would be lost. They made an absolute botch of it, and I think to recognise, as quickly as they have, they've made a botch of it. I reckon the majority of people watching this programme tonight will say, isn't it nice for once to see a minister at the dispatch box saying, we got it wrong, we've changed our minds. It's rather refreshing.
There have been a lot of questions about whether we should go on funding aid to India. Nigel Farage.
Well, we're giving £50 million a day to the European Union, and on top of that, we now have and that budget is due to go up by 60% in the next 2 years. And at the same time...
Do you answer every question in terms of Europe? Even a question that's asked about India?
It's interesting, David. But this, of course, is the great truth of our life that everyone's tried to deny for years, is just how important this issue is,
Yeah, but
and the fact that most of our laws come from here.
Yeah, but it wasn't the question.
Well,
Can you answer Corinne's question?
Well, I've answered. I'm the only panellist that's answered each of the questions directly before. I will come to your question. It is completely mad that here we are with aircraft carriers, with no aeroplanes, where this week we've announced that 100 pilots who we'd spent an average of £3 million each on, who'd almost completed their training, suddenly being told it's all ended, and yet we're going to give £300 million a year to a country that has aircraft carriers, with up-to-date jets, with trained pilots, with nuclear weapons, and with a government that admits it doesn't need the aid. We are pouring too much money away.
To find out more about who we are and what we stand for, go to the UK Independence Party website at www.ukip.org.